every now and then, and a lot of time parents say this is much past their control. Kerala, interestingly, has stepped in with fresh guidelines aimed at reducing school bag weight. This has reopened a national conversation on how much is too much for a child to carry and whether our education system is unintentionally compromising children's health in the name of learning. So we'd start with that conversation with our experts joining in. Then later in the program, we'll be joined live by a young change maker at the forefront of youth policy engagement. Samya Chauhan, founder of Plan Y, has taken upon herself to empower young people to influence policy and tackle pressing issues facing the nation, from education and mental health to cyber safety and climate action. And finally, we get you all the highlights from last night's India versus New Zealand first ODI. KL Rahul led India to the 4-wicket victory over New Zealand in the series opener. But first, let's start with something most parents will recognize instantly: a school bag that feels heavier than it should. This is a complaint that usually gets brushed aside. Now, obviously, this isn't a new problem. Parents have raised concerns for years. Doctors have warned about it for just as long. Yet, in most schools, nothing really changes. Parents say children are carrying more than their bodies can handle, and this isn't about one bad day or one heavy book alone. It is a daily load, and younger children are taking the biggest hit. Doctors, amidst all this, are clear on the issue. Heavy school bags put strain on growing spines, postures get affected, and this happens early on. Muscle, nerve stress builds very quietly over time. The worrying part is that pain doesn't always show up immediately. Sometimes the damage appears years later. In many schools, all textbooks are prescribed every single day. There are no lockers, book schedules are rarely shared, homework loads are rarely questioned, and the burden shifts entirely to parents and children. Against this backdrop, one state has decided to act, which is Kerala. Kerala has cleared a plan to reduce school bag weight. The state says bag weight will be linked to children and their health. Academic load will be spread more evenly, and schools will be asked to cut what children carry every single day. What makes this stand out is the approach. Most states, remember, issue guidelines and move on. Kerala is looking at changing how classrooms function. The focus is on daily school reality, where health and learning are treated together, not separately. But implementation will really show the whole truth. And the question is, have we ignored a school-going child's necessity for far too long without evaluating the ill effects of the burden that comes alongside every single day? And how do we fix it now? So let's bring in our guest joining us this morning. Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, Padma Shri awardee and senior pediatric expert, is with us on the broadcast, along with Riddhi Deora, parenting coach. And our third guest this morning is Rachna Goel, once again parental coach and educator. Thank you to the three of you for being with us on the Breakfast Club. Dr. Bagai, if I can begin with you, what is that moment that parents possibly realize, and this as per everyone who's come to you, who said that we started noticing these small little postural changes, is why we felt the need to really reach out to you. So no pain really in the neck, in the back, no pain whatsoever, but there's some shift in the way my child is walking, sitting, and it could really have something to do with the weight they're carrying in their school bags. Tell us about some of these parental concerns that parents have come to you with.
Good morning. Unfortunately, it comes to light as the ill effects of short-term and long-term very heavy school bags is when the child is already having certain damages and is actually crying in pain. The real issue is of two folds. One is the school, and second is the index part as the school bag. Now, there are set guidelines that a smaller child of class 1 and class 2 should not carry more than 1 to 1.5 kg school bag, and children in high schools in class 8, 9 and 10 shouldn't carry more than a 5 kg school bag. There are also given dimensions of ranging between 12 inches to 15 inches, going up to 15 inches to 25 inches.
Recording in progress.
The real that it should not exceed under any circumstances more than 5% of body weight. Now, each child is different. The weight of a child is different. The structural strength of a child is different. and it has to be bilaterally equally distributed across two shoulders, well padded. It should be strapped in the front at the sternum so that there is a proper gravitational distribution of weight. And more importantly, since the bags are so heavy, carrying not one but maybe two water bottles, especially in summer months, and therefore there is hardly any space for a child to be carrying sports equipment or anything else which the child requires as extracurricular activities. Back pains, shoulder pains, spine deformities, and these are real. I have even seen children coming in class 6 and class 7 having MRIs done, and they have a disc which is showing. At that age, this is unfair, unacceptable, unlawful, illegal. But who cares? Why no one cares is that the schools have now become a production factory in which they have not one, but they have up to 26 sections per class.
Yeah.
They are fitting in more than 50 to 60 students per class. This is just a production house of producing small robots with no attention given as to the needs of a child or the parents. There has to be proper locker systems in school. There is no space for it because you have overloaded the entire system. It's for financial gains. There is no place where a child can keep sports goods. There is no declaration of which subjects have to be covered. A small child has more than 6 or 7 subjects covered during the course
Interestingly, Dr.
of
Bagai,
morning to afternoon.
a lot of schools are following policies on paper. Interestingly, on paper, everyone is ensuring that everything is going noticed, that children are not carrying excessively heavy bags, that there are locker facilities. But when it comes down to implementation, that's where the real challenge kicks in. Ms. Riddhi, how do you look at this? Of the experience that you've had, now, what we figured out through the course of just understanding how different schools in different parts of the country operate, Kerala, of course, is now trying to set a little bit of a pattern here on how other schools can really copy-paste their model if it turns out to be successful. But across India, we've seen the 10% criteria that Dr. Bagai spoke of. That, on paper, should be followed. Several other states are also looking at their own brackets of how much weight vis-a-vis the body weight should be allowed. But who's really checking all of this? Are regular checks taking place? So are students' bags, the kind of weight that they're carrying on their shoulders, to begin with, is that happening?
Correct. So basically what I feel, there's also a little lack of awareness as far as parents are concerned. Like, of course, we know that the bag is very heavy and we should not, but there are no guidelines that are communicated to the parents. Like, schools have their timetables, school schedules and all of that, but parents do not usually know that, like what Dr. Bagga shared, that, it should be 5% of the body weight, this should be the dimension of the school bag. Usually parents are buying bags from Amazon, or, they'll go and buy some fancy bag, and maybe it's not the best bag for your child. Also, sometimes, when I go to drop my son off at school, I would see that the bags are a little tilted because the weight is not distributed. Like, when I'm dropping him off, I'm seeing that, water bottle is placed on one side, so the bag is tera, and because of which the body of the child also gets tilted. So I feel like with schools, of course, because most parents don't know of this, they just keep telling the child that bag bhari hai, halka kar lo. Like, if I look at myself as a parent also, the days I see my child is carrying a very heavy bag, I'll tell him that, can you remove a few things? I think your bag is too heavy.
Are parents checking with the children's timetable? So are you going back, checking the timetable and then seeing which textbooks, which notebooks are actually finding a place in their school bags?
It would vary from parent to parent. It depends on how involved the parent is. Some parents would check.
So that becomes an important part of the entire process. Parents need to be as involved.
Yes, parents need to get involved, but after a certain age, you can't really get involved. Like, if I look at my own child, he's only 8. Now, he loves to read books. So he always wants to carry storybooks with him. And I keep telling him that your bag is already so heavy, so, remove a few things. But he's like, no, mommy, I need my books. So, it's after a point, even parents, even if they wish to make the bag light, it can be challenging because, children have their own interests. They want to carry a certain type of lunchbox. They want to carry a certain type of, like stationery kit, like the pencil box. Some children like to carry a very fancy thing. So maybe if there is a certain standard as far as like the uniform, if you standardize the bag, you standardize the pencil box, you standardize the lunch box, just like you have a uniform for every school. So if you can standardize all of this, then I think it would be nice if you can take into details the health points, like, this bag would be appropriate for a child in standard 2, and this bag is appropriate for somebody who's going to, let's
So
say,
a lot of micromanaging essentially needs to be done. But there's another challenge here, Ms. Rachna, and if I may come to you for more. The other challenge a lot of parents complain of is how their children feel the need to keep loading their school bags with additional textbooks, everything out of fear. So the fear that their teachers may scold them if they do not take the necessary textbooks, that fear is so much that even if they don't have a certain class period that particular day, just out of fear they're going to insert that textbook or the notebook in their bag.
That's very right, very correctly pointed. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my insights. As an educator, as a parental coach, and as a teacher myself, I truly acknowledge what you have been trying to say. There is a fear among children. More than that, as an educator, I feel there is a need to bring a shift in the pedagogy. We are actually focusing a lot on the theoretical concepts, the textual learning. We need to bring in the experiential learning model. This is the need of the hour. We really need to develop lifelong learners rather than developing and producing rote learners. And that is where this entire concept of, adding this burden of textbooks is there. We really need to eliminate that and bring in the new concepts. We are in the 21st century. But are we really teaching those 21st century skills? Where focus should not be more on books, and thereby we can eliminate this burden of heavy bags.
So you eliminate books and you bring in screens, Ms. Rachna. That's the but.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Not just screens. We need to incorporate technology to a certain extent. But yes, we need to bring in real lifetime projects. Actual sessions wherein we can focus more on libraries. We use these libraries in school just as storage spaces rather than using them as a model to facilitate learning, wherein children can be encouraged to participate in discussions, real life discussions, the real life projects, the experiential learning, where we can teach them science and social studies in a practical manner. Bring in these current affairs for discussions. This will facilitate communication. This will help them in critical thinking, which is what I, as an educator, I feel we are lacking and our education system is failing. So I feel technology should be added. The resources are already there in schools. The smart boards are there. But we need to eliminate the extra burden of books. There can be certain core subjects that can be fixed for a particular day. We can have bagless days for 1 or 2 days during the week, wherein the focus should be more on extracurricular activities, sports, arts, music, depending upon the interest of the child. So I personally feel this will help not just the parents in micromanaging things, but it will also help the learners to develop that critical thinking and those 21st century skills. Because definitely we are in that day and age where degrees should be replaced by skills. So skills development is the need of the hour as per my opinion.
Okay, Dr. Pagai, let's go back to the health perspective here and what medical science tells us. We now have established that there comes a point in a child's life or educational circle that he starts carrying that kind of weight to an extent that it starts pulling their body down. At what point do you think that becomes dangerous and can have long-term spinal problems? So what are these early warnings that parents must pick on and show a doctor, really figure out how they can go about it sooner?
Yeah, so just few very quick points. I think extra burden of a very excess weight bag does cause spinal pain. It begins with pain, discomfort, tilting on one side. The posture becomes abnormal. The gait or the walking style becomes abnormal. The fall of the feet while walking takes a different curvature. it can happen in about few months. But here we are looking at many years of carrying this extra burden. It's like carrying 10 or 15 kg dumbbells with you as a child for many, many hours. A lot of those children go by school buses, which are overcramped. They have to carry their bags in the shoulders or even in the hand, climbing up the steps, frequent falls, there's the risk of injury. More importantly, I think the schools now have to stop producing memorizing small robots. We are losing the fact that we have to develop the cognitive skills of a child and a value system of a child. Why on earth does marks become overwhelmingly as a barometer of success? Complete nonsense. No one in the world looks at marks after a child passes class 10 or class 12. And I've said this on so many different forums and so many lectures. It's the most ridiculous thing to gauge a child's success or a child as a whole, as a personality, on marks and grades. But unfortunately, we are living in an unprecedented era in which grades define a child and a family. Peer pressure, parental pressure itself. That so-and-so's got so many marks and things. Why are all subjects taught on all days? You don't have to carry 7 or 8 different subjects on every day. There has to be a better control on the curriculum and the spacing of the subjects which are taught. Also, schools must have lockers. It has to become mandatory. But if you want to make a school into a factory by pushing in more number of students so for financial gains, then the net result is we'll produce kids which are mentally and psychologically weaker, physically damaged, and mentally harassed. This is a pure psychological trauma on children. And overall, we forget one bottom line is the mental health of a child is going to define our nation in the next 10, 15 years. We need to pay more attention that the child has to be stress-free, no anxiety, no stress. We have to move away from these Monday tests. It's such a trauma on children. The children are packing their bags with every known particular thing. The tiffin is about at least 400, 500 grams.
Not just that, the kind of homework they're bringing back. Now, increasingly, we're looking at summer vacations, winter break, all of that constitutes or makes up for so much homework load, and parents have been constantly complaining about it. Yes, Dr. Bagai, sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, I'll just take 60 seconds more. The weight of a bottle itself is more than a kg, one bottle. In summer months, especially when children are going to go for outdoor activities, they take at least 1.5 or 2 bottles. That itself has exceeded the upper limit of the weight they need to carry. The textbooks, syllabus is so outdated that it will well fit into Jurassic Park. We need to really look into what we are teaching. Why are we teaching? Or are we teaching at all? These are the questions we must answer as a community. Last, most importantly, we are putting water in huge plastic bottles. Plastic hazards are going to kill our children in the next generation. There is going to be an epidemic.
But they're sending the children with plastic bottles, Dr. Bagai, just so that they're not, having to carry that extra weight. That's least exactly when it comes to their bottles. So safe drinking water must be provided by schools. That's how we should begin.
Schools have to give. That's the mandatory basic. How can we overlook the fact that the school must give us clean drinking water? If that's not possible, shut down the schools.
Okay, Riddhi, let me bring you in and really understand what kind of a role can parents play in bringing about this change, because we've established by now that a lot of changes need to happen. They need to be implemented so that the child is not suffering. So how can parents push back without coming off as overprotective or intervening to a point that they should not?
Correct. So I think anything that's done at an individual level, it might be taken as interfering or overprotective, or
I mean, parents can't say we're not going to send our children with any textbooks whatsoever, right? So there has to be a balance.
Correct. So I feel any change has to happen at a community level. Like, Kerala, if we see, it's happening at a community level. So even for schools, if I as a parent go and want to create a change at an individual level, it would be very difficult. Instead, if all the parents can come together and they can have, ideas like the focus should be more on comprehension rather than coverage. What also Dr. Baga shared, that, it should not just be about, I want my child to learn every subject every day. So it should be about comprehension. It should be more about depth than speed, more about understanding the topic rather than just memorizing and not remembering everything. I rather, as a parent, have my child learn 10 things properly than do 100 things which they don't remember later. Also, I feel reason why most parents are not able to bring this shift, and not just the parent, even the schools, I feel, is because of some fear that, I might lose my image, my reputation. Teachers might feel I might lose my job, because I have so many teachers who are my students, like a lot of school owners, principals, and everybody is aware they want this to change. But there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of inertia, and then there's also habit. Like, you just get used to it and then you just keep running with it instead of, doing something about it. So I think these three things, fear, inertia, and habit, is what's stopping us. And if we get together collectively, and if we have of even the schools, faculty, everybody knows. So what's really happening now is the board is just sending some policy, the school is implementing those policies, and parents are complying with those policies silently. So everybody is in fear of change. But somebody has to get out of that fear of change or move out of inertia. And for that to happen, it cannot happen. Either we need another Gandhi who can actually change everybody's mind, or the parents have to get together and do it. Like, even if you see for basic things like a screen, like like usually I'm just derailing a little, but this is so important. Even with phones, like when children become 12, 13, somebody will get a phone, one child gets it, and then all children are like, my friend has it, I want it. But if parents get together and they decide that we are not going to give phones to our children, so if nobody is giving, there's no pressure on anybody.
So
But
collective pressure. So
the collective, so
a balanced judgment on what should be allowed should be taken by parents, and that should be the first pressure building tactic you're suggesting. I do want to take this to Rachna as well. Rachna, practically speaking, so by far you would be in the best position to tell us if in 1 year a certain syllabus needs to be completed. Practically speaking, can we do with a system where we don't have to send children with all textbooks every day? What is this kind of a blend that we can bring about that gets us to this perfect balance?
Of course, I think that can be done. We definitely need a structured approach towards that. Often, you must have seen, as Riddhi was pointing out regarding her son, that tasks are often repetitive in nature. We can definitely cut down on those books. We have multiple books for a particular subject. If we actually fix particular subjects for particular days, have certain bagless days, we can definitely complete the syllabus. And on this platform, I think I should take this opportunity to appeal to the boards also, that we can definitely work towards cutting down the curriculum, which is actually adding unnecessary burden on the students and the parents alike. Nobody is actually
So now that
getting
we're
any
attempting
benefit.
to move away from rote learning, do you think it'll automatically start happening?
I personally do believe that, and that is the need of the hour, because rote learners, at the end of the day, we do not need them, and it is not helping any one of us. Children are suffering, parents are suffering, children are not getting the employability skills that are needed at the end of the day.
Okay.
We need to focus on education rather than rote learning. Being an educator, I would like to repeat this ample times whenever given an opportunity, and I think someday that change will happen.
Okay, lovely. Dr. Bagai, very quickly, if we bring in these changes, so if we move away from textbooks, we will have to open our arms to an extent, even if that's a small margin, to screen time and technology. Like, doctors have warned against this as much. Are you open to that sort of a shift? The moment you put your textbooks down, you're going to have to resort to e-learning.
3 quick points. One is, I think school overall should be a pleasurable experience in which children should look forward to go to school. It should not be a deterrent or a fear in which, oh God, I have to go to school. I think that conceptual change has to be brought about as per yesterday. The curriculum has to change. It's so ridiculous to see botany being taught in huge depth for a child who's going into medicine. I don't treat plants now, right? Neither do I treat animals. So I think it has to be horses for courses rather than trying to put everything, as a buffet for a kid who's getting indigestion anyway. The second point really is, as far as the screen time is concerned, there is a lot of misconceptualization with regards to screen time. A minimum amount of screen time as far as academics is useful because the child gets used to adapting to a computer and using the keyboard. But the screen time also includes unnecessary use of iPads and cell phones and video games. That has to be curtailed. I know for a fact that this is extremely bad for the cognitive skills and the memory and the anxiety levels for children. There is a large study done by Oxford, by Stanford last year, in which they've shown 29% increase in cognitive skills if a child plays less of, especially the smartphone video games and so on. And last, most importantly, is we need to relook as to what we want to produce our kids to be. If the schools are a mere production house of producing more and more number of children for financial gains, then the net result is physical, mental, psychological, weaker population in the next few generations. And that's unfair.
Okay. So there comes a time when these heavy school bags start turning into a medical problem, and that's exactly what we're supposed to work on. Thank you so much. That's all the time we have. Thank you for joining in this morning and really help us understand what can be done, not really just identifying the problem, but also attempting to fix it. And this is where we begin this morning. Well, we head into a very quick break. With that coming right up, we shift our focus to our person of interest. We'll be joined in by a young change maker at the forefront of youth policy engagement. We'll talk about her idea and how she is currently running Plan Y. The vision ahead in just a bit. Be right back.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
To Iran now, defiance continues on the streets of Iran as anti-government protests enter their third week, spreading across all 31 provinces, viewers. Despite a harsh crackdown by security forces under Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, demonstrators refuse to back down. As per reports, at least 116 people have been killed so far and more than 2,600 arrested since the unrest began late last month. Eyewitnesses report security forces using rifles against crowds, with disturbing accounts of hospitals overwhelmed by casualties. The regime has blamed foreign interference, pointing fingers at the United States, while President Donald Trump has said that he is ready to help to deal with the situation. Have a look.
ישראל עוקבת בדריכות על הנעשה באיראן. הפגנות למען החירות התפשטו ברחבי המדינה. העם בישראל, העולם כולו, משתאה מול הגבורה האדירה של אזרחי איראן. ישראל תומכת במאבקם לחופש ומגנה בתקיפות את מעשה הטבח ההמוני באזרחים חפים מפשע. כולנו תקווה שהאומה הפרסית תשתחרר מקרוב מעול העריצות, וכשיום זה יגיע, ישראל ואיראן יחזרו להיות שותפות נאמנות בבניית עתיד של שגשוג ושלום לשני העמים.
President Trump is warning Iran of consequences as unrest spreads across the country. CNN's Jomana Karachi takes a closer look at the protests and Tehran's response. Have a look.
Iran is facing its biggest internal crisis in years as anti-regime protests spread like a wildfire to every single one of its 31 provinces. Here in the city of Mashhad, the birthplace of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, protesters take down the Islamic Republic's flag and tear it to pieces. Dozens of protesters have been killed, hundreds injured, and thousands detained, according to activists and human rights groups. But that did not appear to deter Iranians who poured onto the streets of Tehran and other cities. The regime shut down communications, with fears now growing that they're once again using the blackout to unleash an even more brutal crackdown. President Trump has repeated his threat to hit the regime hard if they kill protesters. Chants for the return of the monarchy, something we hadn't heard during previous waves of protests. Some of the demonstrators appear to be heeding the calls of this man, Reza Pahlavi, the eldest son of the last Shah of Iran. The 65-year-old came to the United States when he was 17 and remained exiled there after his father, the former Shah, was overthrown in the 1979 Islamic Revolution. For years, the exiled crown prince has sought to present himself as a man who can lead Iran's opposition and rid the country of the repressive theocratic rule. In a Washington Post op-ed this week, Pahlavi said he doesn't see protesters chanting his name as a claim to power. Instead, he sees himself as a unifying transitional leader who would help guide the country from tyranny to democracy. But he is a divisive figure. While he does have the support of many Iranian monarchists who are nostalgic for the days of the Shah, it is unclear just how much support he really has inside the country. Many Iranians say Pahlavi hasn't set foot in the country in decades. He's too disconnected from the people who have been on the front lines of the battle for freedom and democracy. Jumana Karachi, CNN, London.
Viewers, we also have CNN News 18's Akansha Swaroop, who spoke exclusively with British activist Tommy Robinson, who reacted to the unrest in Iran, condemned Sharia law and questioned the West's silence on protests and violence against women. Please take a look.
What's your Sunday protest in the UK hoping to achieve for Iranians? Is it
Welcome back. Today is also National Youth Day, and instead of speeches about the future, we're talking to someone who is already working in the present. Our person of interest, Samya Chauhan, is 16. She's been engaging with young people across communities on issues that affect them directly, from safety and education to how youth voices reach decision makers. She was recently also nominated for the Children's Peace Award. Her work focuses on getting students to think beyond opinions and actually engage with how systems work, whether that's policy, institutions, or civic action. Let's hear the rest from Samya Chauhan herself. Hi there, Samya. Good morning. Thank you for joining us here on The Breakfast Club. Samya, tell us, what was the moment you realized you wanted to work on social impact, not later, but now, at just 16?
It wasn't a moment, it was a pattern that's hard to unsee. I kept interacting with youth that was navigating consequences of things that they were not invited to shape, be it in schools, online spaces, or local governance. And I realized that if the youth is living inside the outcomes of policy, then delaying their participation is not neutrality, it's exclusion.
Okay, that's such a thought-provoking statement. Samya, young people often are told to wait their turn. Is that an outdated concept now? Do you agree, disagree?
I don't think it's just outdated. I think it's actually extremely structurally dangerous, because the youth is expected to inherit such massive crises of the future that they're not included in the present. And wisdom, of course, comes with age, but it also comes with lived experience. So it's so important that we also are engaged with the problems of the current and of the present, so that we can also successfully engage with them in the future.
You spoke of problems of the past, the present, and how we can then work on the future. But what are these problems that bothered you the most? Bothered you to a point that you thought this was important enough to act on?
I think it was the gap between voice and genuine participation, because so many people have empathy, ideas, and intelligence, but it's really hard to translate that into on-ground action and impact. So I think giving frontline workers and passionate youth clear pathways, decision pathways, frameworks, clear protocols to actually implement their passions and the ideas that they care deeply for is so important.
Samya, tell us now about Children's Space Award. We gave a little bit of an introduction on that while we were talking about your story. What did that recognition mean to you personally?
I think the nomination for the Peace Prize was more of a mirror, because I think it really reinforced the commitment to the communities behind my work. And I think it is so important that we take recognition as something that deepens our engagement and not something that halts it.
Okay, now you're doing so much at such a young age, but there's also another conversation that keeps happening every now and then around Gen Z, the younger generation today. What do you think is the biggest misconception about this generation, and debunk it for us here?
So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that we're impatient when we're working on compressed timelines and when we just want urgent action, even though we do realize that social impact, of course, is not immediate or linear in any way, and also that we mainly work on online platforms and online activism when that's not the case. I know so many young people who are working on grassroots level action, on ground action, actually interacting with society and institutions on a daily basis.
Sammy, you've also spent time working with students and young voices across different communities. What happens when young people are given real tools instead of just platforms?
Right. So I think platforms help amplify voices, whereas tools actually helps translate everyone's voice into action. For example, through Plan Y, my policy leadership and advocacy action network for the youth, we created something called She Speaks, that is a toolkit for Anganwadi women workers to combat domestic violence and safeguarding. And that helped us realize that it is so important to actually be convictive and be passionate, but it is more important to actually translate that through protocols, kits and tangible resources that everyone can have access to.
Lovely. Samya, what is it that makes youth-led effort like the one that you're showing to the world actually effective? Give us an example from your own work and your journey so far.
Right. I've seen so many youth being surveyed, consulted, showcased, but there's no real impact because their insights are not translated into actual material that is traveled everywhere. They're just taken as case studies and testimonies. So I think one thing that Plan Y is doing, especially through the reappearance protocol, is not just consulting the youth, but actually making the youth actively involved. It is for the youth, by the youth and of the youth. So I think that is extremely important. And also focusing on not just structure, but on design and accountability. Accountability, I think, is the most imperative thing for proper effective youth-led efforts, and then matching that accountability with not just narrative-based outcomes but tangible outcomes is so important. So one project that we've been working on as a part of Plan Y's gender justice vertical is the reappearance protocol, which is India's first survivor reintegration framework. It is a three-tier reintegration framework for acid attack survivors, and it focuses on employment, state accountability and skilling. So as a part of the reappearance protocol, we have trained 68 survivors and we've placed 39 acid attack survivors in formal employment, and we've also formed the National Acid Attack Rehabilitation Compliance Index for state accountability and ministerial.
Which also tells us, Samya, that you work with students from diverse backgrounds. But tell us about these stories of changes. What changes when young people realize they can influence decisions that affect their own lives?
I think when people see the impact and the outcomes of their own work and things that they helped shape, their engagement deepens to a great extent, because people stop asking, is someone listening to me? And they start asking, how can I make this better? What can I do for society? In what ways can we implement this? How can we increase the scale? So the question really shifts, And I think if people really see the outcomes of their insight in the real world, in real life practice, in policy implementations, if their ideas are helping transform people's lives, then that kind of reinstates and reinforces their commitment to society and long-term societal work for their entire lives.
Okay, we're also speaking at a very interesting day. It's National Youth Day. What would your message be today to people across the country, especially the young, your generation?
On the count of National Youth Day, one message I would like to carry forward that I learned from Kila Satyarthi sir, a Nobel laureate, is that it is so important to be compassionate and keep in mind the compassion quotient, and not just see compassion as a sentiment but as a metric for problem solving and on-ground action.
Okay, we're coming towards the end of this conversation, Samya. Very quickly, let's do a fun rapid fire this morning. Tell me about the one young leader you admire the most and why.
Chhavi Rajawat, who is the first woman sarpanch with an MBA in rural Rajasthan.
One habit every young changemaker should build early on?
Staying after listening.
How lovely. And one thing schools shouldn't teach, but you should possibly inculcate on your own.
How to engage with systems at a grassroots level.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Samya, for joining us this morning and for the wonderful conversation. All the very best. I'm really excited to see where you're headed in the next 5 or 10 years from now. So we'll keep tracking your journey. Thank you for joining us here on The Breakfast Club. For now, let's take you to stories from India across the world. Lots trending. Let's take a look. Biting cold gripped the capital as it experienced the first cold wave of the season, with minimum temperatures falling below 3 degrees Celsius at some places, according to IMD officials. Similar conditions are likely to prevail over the next 2 days, and a yellow alert has also been issued in this regard. The Safdarjung Observatory, Delhi's principal weather station, recorded minimum temperature of 4.8 degrees Celsius, 2.6 notches below the seasonal average, while the maximum temperature settled at 18.8 degrees Celsius, which is 1.1 notches below normal as per IMD data. School holidays have been extended in Delhi due to severe cold and dense fog. The Delhi Directorate of Education has announced that winter vacations for students from nursery to grade 8 will continue until 15th of January to protect children from health issues and travel difficulties caused by cold wave and low visibility. This order does not apply to all classes. Students in grade 9 to 12 will continue their studies offline, but specific guidelines have been issued for their safety. Several Delhi schools have informed parents that regular classes will resume on 16th of January. AI-generated content has flooded the internet, and YouTube music users are the latest to face the wrath of songs that have AI written all over them. Other platforms like Instagram and even Google to some extent are riddled with content that no humans have generated, and this is becoming a serious problem which these companies need to fix before it takes over the quality of the content that people see on the internet. Many YouTube music users even point out that disliking the content doesn't help, and they continue to see the songs generated by AI tools in their feed with no way to block them out. YouTube Music is also used by millions. Remember, these AI slops, as many have called it, are not sure about sticking around and could be forced to jump ship to Spotify or even Apple Music. OpenAI is going further deep into the health ecosystem with the new ChatGPT Health version, which has been carved out of the intelligence of its AI chatbot and gives people more accurate and personal health assistance. Sam Altman and co have been diversifying the AI tools and connecting the users with more applications, and health data feels like the obvious pivot that allows the company to make AI more intrinsic for the consumers in the long term. OpenAI says millions of people are already asking health and wellness questions every week, so it has decided to build ChatGPT to focus on health measures with the new version. The Press Information Bureau on Sunday denied claims that the central government had asked smartphone makers to share their source code or make software changes, rejecting a Reuters report that suggested this was part of a security overhaul. In a statement posted on X, the PIB said Government of India has not proposed any measure to force smartphone manufacturers to share their source code. The PIB fact-check post called the report misleading and urgent, and urged the public to verify information through official sources. It clarified that the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has only started stakeholder consultations to discuss a possible regulatory framework for mobile security. Answering an unknown number has increasingly become a gamble, especially in an era of spam and scam calls. While third-party caller ID apps attempt to fill this gap, the names they display are often unreliable. That uncertainty may soon end. The government is preparing to roll out India's first official caller identification system built directly into telecom networks and independent of external apps. Known as calling name presentation, the system is expected to be introduced within the next 2 to 3 months. Kriti Sanan's sister Nupur Sanan and singer Stebin Ben have set social media abuzz after sharing the first official pictures from their wedding ceremony, accompanied by the heartfelt caption, "It says always and forever." The dreamy photos posted on their social media handles instantly went viral. Alia Bhatt recently took to social media to shower heartfelt praises on Yami Gautam's performance in Haq. The actor shared a still of Yami from the film and penned an emotional note calling her a queen and lauding her craft. Haq is based, remember, on an original story and was released in theatres in November 2025. It is recently released on OTT platform as well. We also spoke to the director. We will be playing out that full conversation on our CNN News 18 YouTube page too. The Golden Globes are back and Hollywood is rolling out the red carpet once again, kicking off the 2026 awards season. The 83rd Golden Globe Awards is a promise of glamour, laughs and star-studded moments with Timothée Chalamet, Leonardo DiCaprio, Michael B. Jordan, Ariana Grande, Cynthia Erivo and Emma Stone among this year's nominees. The ceremony is taking place at the Beverly Hilton in Beverly Hills, California. Selena Gomez made a stylish appearance at the 2026 Golden Globes along with her husband Benny Blanco. For the special event, Gomez chose a custom black velvet gown featuring pink feathers and organza and silk chiffon flowers draped over her shoulders. She stayed with her favorite black and white color theme. For the night, Selena completed her look with spiral diamond earrings and black heels that you see on the streets. And in more from the world of entertainment, after an engaging season 1, director Nikhil Advani returns with season 2 of Sony Live's Freedom at Midnight, revisiting key moments from the final days of British rule in India. He speaks to CNN News 18's Vishal Chatkara about the new season, fondly recalls working with Akshay Khanna and shares an embarrassing anecdote involving Salman Khan from Salam-e-Ishq. Here's that conversation.
आप लोग पंजाब की 5 नदियों से परेशान हो गए, बंगाल बाकी।
मैं मेनन को साफ-साफ बोल दूंगा कि हम कलकत्ता नहीं छोड़ेंगे।
The trailer of season 2 of Freedom at Midnight say the history you may not know but should know. I read few chapters of the book Freedom at Midnight. I'm very curious to know which parts of the book will season 2 focus on.
Yeah, so I think Vishal, I think that the first thing to I mean use the opportunity to tell people, even if you've not seen season 1, you can still see season 2. And I think that at the end of season 1, there is a very ominous saying that Gandhi says कि जब पेड़ की जड़ें कटती है तो वो उसे होश नहीं होता कि क्या हो रहा है. हम लोगों की जड़ें काट रहे हैं, right? उनको भी होश नहीं होगा, right? So he gives this foretelling कि मतलब it's all going to go wrong, it's going to blow up, and that is what happens in season 2. Is the aftermath, is what we are even 80 years later. You're dealing with certain things that happened in 1947, between July of 1947 and January of 1948. Yeah.
With the success of Dhurandhar, it seems like Gen Z has discovered Akshay Khanna. What, according to you, sir, is his gift, and what is your most enduring memory of working with him?
I can't talk about the various moments that Akshay Khanna, myself, and the rest of the assistant directors had during the making of Salam Ishq. He's extremely well read. Some of the books that he loves are books that I don't aspire to read, but he reads them, and he irritates me with lots of conversations about it. Sahil Sangha and Akshay Khanna would play chess for over 5 days. 5 days ke liye they would be playing chess. And he would, because for the beginning of Salamesh, he's wearing a bathrobe, so he will wear a bathrobe, and I had to tell him, Akshay, sit properly here. So he was he chilled out. He's a chilled out guy, totally chilled out.
So then please tell us about your embarrassing moment from the sets of Salamesh, the one where you called
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
called
it was, I think, it was day one of the shoot, and I was very nervous, and it was going to be a Maurat clap. Arpita had come to give the clap. We were shooting at ND Studios, and Salman and the dancers, and I was looking into the monitor, and I said, "Ready, Shahrukh?" And everybody froze, and he looked at me and said, "Of course, Karan, I'm ready."
Okay, shifting our attention now to the great news that came in for India yesterday from the world of sports. India defeated New Zealand by 4 wickets in the first one-day international of the 3-match series in Vadodara and took a 1-0 lead. Daryl Mitchell's half-century helped New Zealand post a total of 300 for 8. India strike first in the ODI series, but only after surviving a late scare in Vadodara. In fact, skipper Shubman Gill, remember, contributed with 56 runs. Virat Kohli's commanding 93 set the tone really in a tense chase of 301 before KL Rahul sealed a 4-wicket win with a big finish. Here's a quick sum up.
India draw first blood in the ODI series, but not without a late twist. Chasing 301 in Vadodara, they stumbled, regrouped and crossed the line with an over to spare. 4 wickets the margin, plenty of nerves along the way. After being put into bat, New Zealand posted 300 for 8 with Daryl Mitchell anchoring the innings with a powerful 84, batting through the chaos till the end. Henry Nicole set the platform early with a fluent 62 at the top. In reply, India finished on 306 for 6 in 49 overs. Virat Kohli was in complete control for his 93, facing the chase and killing the pressure. Shubman Gill chipped in with a composed 56 as the asking rate stayed in check. The star of the night, of course, was Virat Kohli. Calm against pace, ruthless against spin, he stitched partnerships, absorbed pressure and even climbed past the 28,000 international runs before falling just short of 100. His dismissal cracked open the door, but his work had already set the tone. And the decisive moment came late with wickets falling and tension rising. KL Rahul took charge in the penultimate over. 2 boundaries, then the final blow. A towering 6. Game set and India lead the series 1-0.
So India giving this really the right start in the opening ODI. The next is going to be played on the 14th. Let's see how that plays out. Heading into a very short break for now. We're not done as yet. We'll be right back in just a bit.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
To Iran now, defiance continues on the streets of Iran as anti-government protests enter their 3rd week, spreading across all 31 provinces, viewers. Despite a harsh crackdown by security forces under Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, demonstrators refuse to back down. As per reports, at least 116 people have been killed so far and more than 2,600 arrested since the unrest began late last month. Eyewitnesses report security forces using rifles against crowds, with disturbing accounts of hospitals overwhelmed by casualties. The regime has blamed foreign interference, pointing fingers at the United States, while President Donald Trump has said that he is ready to help to deal with the situation. Have a look.
ישראל עוקבת בדריכות על הנעשה באיראן. הפגנות למען החירות התפשטו ברחבי המדינה. העם בישראל, העולם כולו, משתאה מול הגבורה האדירה של אזרחי איראן. ישראל תומכת במאבקם לחופש ומגנה בתקיפות את מעשי הטבח ההמוני באזרחים חפים מפשע. כולנו תקווה שהאומה הפרסית תשתחרר מקרוב מעול העריצות, וכשיום זה יגיע, ישראל ואיראן יחזרו להיות שותפות נאמנות בבניית עתיד של שגשוג ושלום לשני העמים.
President Trump is warning Iran of consequences as unrest spreads across the country. CNN's Jomana Karachi takes a closer look at the protests and Tehran's response. Have a look.
Iran is facing its biggest internal crisis in years as anti-regime protests spread like a wildfire to every single one of its 31 provinces. Here in the city of Mashhad, the birthplace of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, protesters take down the Islamic Republic's flag and tear it to pieces. Dozens of protesters have been killed, hundreds injured, and thousands detained, according to activists and human rights groups. But that did not appear to deter Iranians who poured onto the streets of Tehran and other cities. The regime shut down communications, with fears now growing that they're once again using the blackout to unleash an even more brutal crackdown. President Trump has repeated his threat to hit the regime hard if they kill protesters. Chants for the return of the monarchy, something we hadn't heard during previous waves of protests. Some of the demonstrators appear to be heeding the calls of this man, Reza Pahlavi, the eldest son of the last Shah of Iran.
امروز با شما در میان میگذارم و از شما دعوت میکنم.
The 64
Welcome back. We now bring to you a special section on financial markets powered by Money Control Pro. Money Control's